Welcome to the Go Diaper-Free podcast, where we're all about helping you stop depending on diapers as early as birth. I'm your host, Andrea Olson, author and mom of 5 E-Seed babies. This is episode 50, my unassisted water birth. Okay, you guys, so this podcast is all about elimination communication. And yes, I will mention that in today's story, but I have to share with you my recent unassisted birth. I do have a full post of this up in my blog, and that'll be linked to at godiaperfree.com/50. And I would love to see your comments. It's already got over 100 comments because I posted this back in November when my baby was born, or rather in December when I finally formulated the story. But today I'm going to share with you the full story in audio version because if you're like me, I'm a busy mom and it's a lot easier for me to listen to things instead of sit down and try to read an entire blog post. Or book for that matter, which is why, by the way, Go Diaper-Free comes with an audiobook version currently. And that's for you. I'm talking to you. All right. Okay, so let's talk about this birth story. This was my most satisfying birth to date, and it was awesome. And the events that led up to it were pretty interesting. So I'm going to share with you my birth story now for baby number 5. Twyla Bentley was born on November 20th, 2018 at 5:51 a.m. in an unassisted birth. Water birth, you could call it a free birth. There are many names for what happened, but basically I birthed her in our bathtub with no outside assistance or interference whatsoever. No doctor, no midwife, no doula, no OB, just me, my husband, and our baby. Let's take this in 3 parts, like a 3-act play. Act 1, the midwife quit. Rewind to about 2 days before my due date, November 13th, 2018. My midwife and I had an appointment scheduled for 1:15 p.m. I didn't want to make this appointment that week before, mind you, but she insisted. You may be wondering, why did you hire a midwife if you wanted an unassisted birth? And by the way, I didn't want to make the appointment because I really felt like I just needed some alone time because I was already about to be at my due date and I just wanted to sort of be with myself for a little while and call her when I was in labor. So why did you hire a midwife if you wanted an unassisted birth, Andrea? Well, good question. You see, I've attempted an unassisted birth 4 times over 5 births. Each experience has been unique and has taught me a lot, and all of them have led up to my decision about this birth. After all that I've experienced over the last 8 years of having babies, I decided that this time around I'd prefer to have someone else in the house, just in case I had a question, to which an answer could save me from illogically choosing to go to the hospital. I have done that twice. They were not emergencies. I also wanted someone else to do my prenatal care. You may remember that my husband and I separated for a couple months earlier in 2018. It was really rough. So wanting a little more support felt like a really good decision back in the summer when I most needed it, and I was a single mom. So I was referred to Jane, we'll call her, because she's unlicensed and thus would be absolutely, I was assured, able to provide an undisturbed birthing experience. Undisturbed would mean that she would not intervene unless I asked her to, because even midwives can intervene and cause things to go awry or slow down or just not go the way nature's intending, even with the best intentions. Things were not going exactly as planned during this prenatal period. I have a photograph up on the blog where my 5-year-old caught our true sentiment in this photograph. She looks a little bit annoyed with me. So let me briefly summarize the pathway to our ultimate falling out. Number 1, I told her I was taking the Spinning Babies online class, and she immediately questioned the validity of the program, who taught it, etc., despite having handed me a printed handout from the spinningbabies.com website that same day. She grilled me about whether I should be taking the Spinning Babies classes and who was a teacher and what was I doing. It was not cool. Perhaps she was turned off by my strong streak of self-sufficiency and resourcefulness. I have, after all, fully researched and written the almost complete draft of a book on unassisted birth, which by the time this podcast is out, that book should be out. It is called Brave New Birth. Number 2, I told her I didn't want to purchase gauze for my birth kit supplies. She insisted they were for her to wipe my butt in the middle of labor if she needed to, and for wiping the snot out of my new baby's nasal passages. I told her I didn't believe babies needed wiped because when they are born, they are face down and their passages naturally drain. I also stated that gauze is a medical supply and that Wapio, my teacher, advised that we consider deeply which supplies we purchase for our birth and how each item reflects our expectations of the type of birth that we want to have. We'll talk more about Wapio in point 3. 3, she was unprofessional about others in the birth space. So yeah, Wapio, probably one of my favorite people ever, a dear friend. She taught my doula program when I was prepping for baby number 2, hoping for an unassisted birth that time around. She advised me on the Brave New Birth book that I've written and I'm preparing for publication. Wapio teaches midwives, doulas, and unassisted birth in her school, the Matrona, all over the United States and in some other countries. My midwife had major issues with Wapio, claiming that Wapio puts ideas into women's minds that mislead them to believe that they'll have a certain type of idealized birth. She actually compared Wapio to the OBs at the hospital, and she said Wapio hates the medical model. We had a pretty big verbal brawl about this back in October, and I never really did recover from that vast unprofessionalism this midwife showed. So disrespectful of Wapio. She even said Wapio doesn't even attend births, to which I said yes, she's attended like 800. The midwife said no, she's only attended about 300 births. She hardly has any experience. Wow, 300 is a lot in my book, and the words Wapio speaks, they are full of 100% truth, positivity, science, and fact. Moving on, and as you can see, when I wrote this post, I was extremely upset about this. So number 4, she pushed me to schedule an appointment with her when I told her I'd like to lay low and see if my baby comes next week and call her when I'm in labor versus having another appointment because I was fine. She said something to the effect that she needed to check in with how I was doing so she could be present with me at the birth. The problem was that her desires completely excluded what I wanted as her client and disregarded what I intuited that the baby and I needed, which was privacy. I had hired her to be there in the other room as David and I had our baby in the other room and to be there for the postpartum cleanup and care for the following days and weeks. I did not hire her to dictate my care. This was totally alarming. Number 5, she passively aggressively canceled our appointment 2 days before my due date, then quit completely via text. She broke up with me over text, you guys. The midwife apparently had been trying to call and text me to confirm the appointment we'd set in our calendars for 1:15 that day. I do not keep my phone on during the precious 3 hours of work I give myself each morning. It helps me stay focused. I finally saw her text at 12:18 p.m. that she said she wanted to reschedule since she hadn't heard from me. Mind you, she insisted on this appointment in the first place against my will. Remember that? So now I've been expecting it and I prepared for it and I moved my life around for it and she's canceling? I texted her and said I'd see her there, that we'd actually already set it in the calendar and confirmed. She wrote back to call her that she felt very uncomfortable. I told her the family and I have shifted plans and I'll call her later that evening. She proceeded to blow up my phone by texting incessantly, repeating how uncomfortable she felt and hinting at quitting on me. And I simply replied, we'd speak on the phone later on, no worries. I mean, I had a car full of sleeping kids, so I'm not going to get on the phone right now. But ultimately, over text, she said she could no longer work with me. Instead of being patient and doing a phone call later on, in which I can assure you I was going to fire her anyway, she broke up with me over text. Seriously, 2 days before my due date. I didn't tell a soul because I didn't want to worry anyone enough to send me scary birth vibes like I didn't tell my mother. I almost wrote my email list here at Go Diaper Free because I knew you all would understand, but I didn't. It took me several days to process the anger, resentment, and outright betrayal I felt from this woman. So that's all about the midwife and the terribly uncomfortable circumstances that caused us to part ways. Yes, I am still a little upset about what happened. The archetypal betrayal of the feminine, you know. However, you guys, it's all good. At 12:32 p.m. that day, after getting her first passive-aggressive text about canceling our appointment, I texted Wapio, who immediately agreed to be on call for my birth for any questions I might have. Wapio on speed dial. This was all turning around really nicely. So here's Act 2, kicking everyone out. On the day the midwife quit, I sent our au pair, who'd only been with us a month so far, to Charlotte, 2 hours away, to stay with my mother, so that we could have privacy in our home and I could make a nest for baby to arrive. As I processed this freaking terrible situation with the midwife, I began to realize that what Twyla wanted was a truly 100% unassisted birth. I began to read my entire book manuscript, beginning to end, and prepare myself mentally, physically, and emotionally for a true unassisted birth. Talk about being forced by the universe to do what you were intended to do all along. It was a blessing. This is why I can't be mad at her anymore. She gave me such a gift by quitting. This new book, Brave New Birth, I used to call it the Unassisted Birth Manual, but I've changed it, Brave New Birth. I started writing it when I was pregnant with Isadora 5 years ago because nowhere could I find a concise guide to the ins and outs of unassisted birth. a how-to. It needs some final editing, but it has been reviewed by a teaching midwife, informed heavily by Wapio, Grantley Dick Reed, and Michelle O'Donnell, and it's full of awesome prep info. So through reading my own book manuscript over the next few days, I prepared to assist myself in having this baby because the universe had left me no other choice. For the next few days, I continued to do prenatal yoga. My back had been going out for several weeks so bad that I could hardly walk when I stood up from sitting or laying down sometimes, and I knew that baby wouldn't come until it had been repaired. Every day I came to yoga, and every day I felt embarrassed to be there. My last 3 babies had come 2 weeks early. Why was Twyla taking so long? I had tried to schedule another trigger point massage therapy appointment in town. This has also been helping my back in a big way, and now I was ready for induction points to be pressed. I was getting impatient, you guys. I couldn't schedule our normal Thursday for some reason. The masseuse was not available, so I scheduled with her for 2 days later, a Saturday, and early that morning she texted that she was sick and she couldn't see me. Totally not mad at her. She's a good friend, but it was important that I did not get induced, obviously. So that morning, feeling disappointed about no induction points and with no signs of imminent labor, I sent my 3 kiddos to Grandma's house in Charlotte to stay there until baby comes, or 3 of my kiddos. Thanksgiving was in 5 days, you guys. Would Twyla come in time for me to get my kiddos back? We were down to 1 kid, my 8-year-old. Monday came around and we took him to school to go to his father's house for the week. That night, David, my hubs, asked me what I wanted for breakfast the next morning because we finally had no kids to take care of and we can sleep in. Ha! I told him that Twyla is going to come at 4 a.m. precisely for this reason. I'm going to take a sip of tea. This is a long story. Okay, there's a picture of my giant belly on the post if you want to see it. Go to diaperfree.com/50. Act 3, the most amazing thing, catching my own baby. At 4 a.m. Tuesday, the very next morning, I began to have low belly, menstrual-like cramps. I was laying down in bed, so I began the lap timer in my phone. 70 seconds long, 5 minutes in between. Then upwards of 90 seconds long, 2 minutes in between. And I have a little screenshot of my lap timer. My husband botched my latest times, but I got 24 minutes of info on the lap timer when I woke up. Within 30 minutes, labor had begun, full on, no doubt in my mind. And note, there are no pictures in this section of my birth story. Undisturbed birth, in my definition, also excludes cameras and video, as much as I would love to have seen what it looked like. I didn't. I don't get to. Neither do you. Okay, when I got up from bed, the contractions continued. A surefire sign that labor has begun is when you change positions and the rhythm of the contractions does not change. The rhythms continue to increase in intensity and decrease as far as time between contractions go. With every contraction, I did as my birth book advised. I focused on relaxing my yoni and my mouth, breathing deeply, and diffusing my focus away from the contraction itself. I didn't hyper-focus on the contraction, but focused on other things and definitely made sure to relax. Focused relaxation, diffuse awareness of the tightening. I knew what was happening with each sensation. Every tightening meant that my cervix was dilating, and I was in full support of that happening quickly. Every sensation is listed in that Brave New Birth book and translated, so I knew what to expect. I brought Twyla's new baby blanket to the laundry room and began a load so it would be cleaned and ready by the time she arrived. I doubled over in front of the washing machine mid-contraction, caught my breath, and continued preparing. I walked around the house rapidly, quickly, calmly, and found sitting on my yoga bolster to feel really good. But very soon, no sitting would suffice. To the toilet, sitting during a contraction felt good only there. Run a bath, I said to Hubs. He complied while I had a major contraction on the rug in our bathroom floor. The thought ran through my head. So this is my midwife. Thinking of my husband. I almost started to laugh. Now, I had overcome several blocks over the past week after my midwife quit. While reading up on unassisted birth inside my book draft, I realized that seeking comfort would not impede the progress of the labor. It would simply help me feel more comfort. So with my first birth, I thought that it slowed down my labor to sit in the tub the whole time, but I wasn't really embracing that it was actually helping me relax. So anyway, I popped into that warm bath, not expecting it to retard my progress, but instead expecting to feel comfort and release while my body continued to do its work of pushing my baby out. It felt great to have the water rushing over my shoulders as each contraction came more and more strongly. For a moment, I did fantasize about going to the hospital and how that was such an easy way out, always an option, but then quickly remembered what that would look like. Let me walk you through my other 4 births real quick. It'll be fast. My first birth was an overmanaged, midwife-driven home birth, long, painful, not wholly fulfilling, 4 hours of pushing. My second birth, well, I went to the hospital because I didn't know I was fully dilated, had no urge to push, and upon arrival had her within 30 minutes after 30 minutes of annoying nurse coaching yells to get her out as if it were an emergency. They even pulled her head. I then had to demand we be released within 12 hours like a jail. It totally was like a jail. And they cut her cord prematurely. I was mad. That birth story is also linked to from this blog post over in the show notes. My third was an unassisted birth with a friend in the hallway to whom I could shout out a question or two. Freaking amazing Wonder Woman birth standing up in the tub. Also linked to that story in my show notes. My fourth was the same situation as my second, but it was the bag of waters impeding full dilation. Again, with some patience and knowledge, I could have had him at home too, but I didn't. 30 minutes after arriving at the hospital with a ton of worried push chants and them pulling on his head, he was born. It was like jail. Very hard to get them to release us, but we left at 12 hours. They said, oh yeah, you can go home, but we'll call Child Protective Services if you do. Not fair, not a choice. I was so mad there too. Okay, so yeah, the fleeting thought of a hospital run during this labor, that didn't last long. The truth, Andrea, it will take way longer and it will hurt way more at the hospital. And why would you want the company of a bunch of strangers, nurses, and doctors when you could just stay here and trust your body and your baby? That ridiculous thought left my brain just about as quickly as it had entered. Besides, I told Hubs that if I said I wanted to go to the hospital during the labor, to instead encourage me and tell me that I'm doing it, I'm doing fine, and to just plain ignore my request. We went over the 4 red flags of birth last week during preparation. He knew the drill and the difference between what is a true emergency, the 4 red flags, and what is just me acting on behalf of hormones, which is often that really scary, almost done with birth point for me. So I didn't say a word about the hospital thought. I just let it go. I realized the contractions were getting incredibly uncomfortable and occurring much more often and much more intensely. My thoughts? Very clearly, I heard a voice in my head say, do not be afraid. This is the way through. It is a great sign that they are harder and faster and more intense. That means my baby will be here soon. There is no way around this, only through. I get chills as I read that. As I labored in the tub, warm water flowing over me, my husband got a cold rag and put it on my back. During every contraction, I braced myself in the tub and I relaxed my yoni and mouth, the rest of me fully stabilized and pushing with all my might. It wasn't painful, but it was intense and otherworldly. And I was actually pushing against the tub with my arms. Yeah, it was intense. Then I was fast asleep with my head on the edge of the tub, being given the gift of my second wind, and I knew that I was fully dilated. That's also covered in Brave New Birth, that part of the process that's pretty common across women. My husband whispered, Grantley Dick Reed is with you. They're all with you. You're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. I reached inside and felt the bag of waters. I confirmed my thought. It felt as though I was fully dilated. Yesterday, I felt the bag dilated a few centimeters only and my cervix. Today, no cervix to be felt at all. There was nothing there. I questioned myself for a moment, though. Maybe I'm not dilated yet. Then I said with confidence from some unknown source, no, I am absolutely fully dilated, and I said that out loud. David went to YouTube to learn how to pop a bag of waters just in case. With our last birth, you'll remember, this was our issue. He came back in because I was yelling. Contractions were back on. I kept my voice low, very low, but I was really in it. My fingers inside, I felt her head inside the bag. I was awing and cooing and eyeing, saying, hi, baby, I can't wait to see you. And then a big contraction came and I pushed really hard, spontaneously, because it felt like I should, causing the bag of waters to break into the tub of water. I felt her head more clearly now. I focused on how it felt to bring her down the birth canal. I wasn't afraid. I was lucid, present, excited, focused, intent. I was talking to her, Hub said afterwards, but I can't remember that part. I was in a complete daze, yet focused somehow. Hubs was holding me up when needed. I was bracing, relaxing, focused, yet completely in outer space at the same time. One contraction with the urge to push. If I didn't push, it hurt really bad, so I pushed, feeling her head moving down as I did so, with my fingers inside my vagina. 2 or 3 more of these, seemingly a few minutes apart each. I can't be sure, but I was floating in oblivion at those moments. A few more of these, and Twyla's head was right at the opening to her new world. oh, baby, come on, sweetheart," is what Hubs heard me say. I felt the biggest contraction of the whole morning, and with it, the urge to push, and also the intuition to not do it too quickly. And I bared down as I instinctively got up onto one knee inside the bathtub. My hands on her head, stabilized by my position, I pushed with all my might. With restraint when called from my body, with full abandon when called from my body. And this push must have lasted about 5 minutes, I swear. I think I might have been singing like an opera star, I don't know. From all I've been told, the crowning didn't mean that birth was imminent. So I threw that out the window as garbage advice. My body pushed her head out inside that one gigantic contraction. The bulge in my bottom was really intense, but I couldn't call this head birthing painful. It was intense, and a mixed bag of restraint and going for it, but not painful. I then had Twyla's cute little head in my hands. I felt a cute little ear on the right and a sweet, chubby little cheek on the left, and I whispered to my husband, "I have her head in my hand," so quietly. I began to panic a little. This must be that last rush of adrenaline, maybe, that I've read about. Hubs calmed me by saying, "You are doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. You are fine." I reached my finger in next to her neck for whatever reason to check her shoulder. I have no idea. And then I felt the urge to push. I was afraid, though, which I knew could create tension, which creates pain, afraid that this would really hurt. But when I let off and didn't push with a contraction, it hurt, so I pushed. Another marathon one with restraint and full-on abandon, a mixed bag, and her whole body came out into my hands under the water. The next moments are a bit blurred, but David remembers that last push. That was the one, as the opera-like yell, yes, of reaching the top of the mountain, letting out a victory cry almost, and saw me pull her out of the water and lean back into the tub with Twyla on my belly. I remember pausing, her body in the water, before I did that, collecting myself, and then somehow slowly laying back in the tub as if I were taking a leisurely soak after a long day of work. Our baby. I looked at my husband and said, "We did it." He was all smiles. He usually is. He has giant teeth. We adored her, and we watched her turn from amphibian into landlubber and get her breath together. I looked at him and declared, "You have to take a picture of this." So there's the first photo, and she's purple. She's so pretty. In the show notes over there, you'll see it. He grabbed his phone and he snapped a few photos and some video, and we chatted as we encouraged our baby girl to get her first gurgly breaths of life. I asked David to grab the bulb syringe out of the laundry room because the midwife had left this sense of doubt in my head that babies can't clear passages on their own. I claim that the pause and the instinctive positions after birth take care of this by nature's design. That's what Wapio told me, and I see that as true. Anyway, when he brought it back, I couldn't bring myself to do it properly. In the next picture in the post, there's vernix all over her, and she's getting her breath about her. Twyla found her breath within a minute or two on her own and began to pink up. My husband brought a blanket and then asked me what he could do for us now. "This is my doula," I chuckled to myself. He got our bed ready with Chuck's pads underneath towels and the heater and humidifier both cranking on because it was November. I began to shiver strongly. It was the hormones, not the temperature. I knew this, but still it was crazy. There's a picture of me standing up in the tub with the umbilical cord attached to her holding her. He was moving us to the bed. It's the umbilical cord. So cool. We moved to the bed and she began to nurse. I began to cramp, which also happens when they nurse. You start to cramp. After about 20 or 30 minutes, we decided to cut the cord. It had completely stopped pulsing, and the placenta felt ready to come out too. David grabbed my book draft, Brave New Birth, and found the picture of where to tie and cut the cord. He'd prepared the strings earlier during labor, and he did a fantastic job of it. So he boiled them in hot water to get them sanitized and ready. There's a picture of Daddy cutting the cord, proper tying and cutting of the cord. Then I got up to pee and put the bowl in the toilet below me. The placenta popped right out into it, and there's a picture of that there as well. And then there's a picture of Daddy and baby bonding. Twyla says hi. And we missed a meconium poop in the blanket, so that's where we bring in elimination communication to the story. When does it exactly start? But hey, we got the next one in the potty, and there's a picture of me with her over-the-top hat potty there. We figured out the time of birth was about 5:51 a.m., given the timestamp on the photograph on David's phone. The entire birth took about an hour, you guys. We weighed our little darling in the sling, 9 pounds of love, and there's a picture of that as well. David turned out to be the best doula ever. He cleaned everything up, and then we began sending photos to our moms and FaceTime the kiddos so they could see their new sister. I told my mom to bring them home right away. I wanted them there right now. Then our gate beeped. The cleaning lady had arrived and cleaned our entire house. Happy surprise. I forgot she was coming. The vacuum did wake me from my first little nap, which was frustrating, but whatever. I appreciated their magical timing, no question. And that was it. We've been laying low since then. 3 of the kids came home in a few hours and met their new little sis, and there's some pictures of them in the show notes. And afterward, a peaceful postpartum. I called the pediatrician on day 1, and I was surprised that the lead doctor advised us to go to the hospital first because of how the birth happened at home. I was appalled. I let them have a piece of my mind. Then I quickly course-corrected. Then they got me a special appointment because I told them they had to with Dr. Peggy, who's our usual doctor, 4 days later, which satisfied me because she knows me very well by now, and she gave us some time to relax. I measured my uterus's involution, returning to the normal place, per my book, Brave New Birth, and I felt healthy with perfect signs of a good recovery. I cover postpartum in that book as well. On day 2, we captured Twyla's footprints on my new unassisted birth certificate, unassisted birth certificate, which will come with my new book, with the little baby safe ink pad I'd ordered previously, so I was prepared for that as well, to get that first little footprint. We caught pees and poos galore, and by day 3, Twyla and I had established our EC rhythm, and there's another picture of me pottying her on the first day. At the pediatrician 4 days later, Twyla was given a bill of clean health, of course. Although we already figured that, her breath and color and vitality and grip, all great signs of a very healthy baby. Poop, outgo, and breast milk input, all normal, all great signs. But I do like to go in and introduce them to the doctor, and this is the longest we'd waited yet. I'm really glad we took our time. Some people don't go to the pediatrician at all after an unassisted birth, but I like to do that. So that's, a choice everybody can make for their own. There's a picture of us at the pediatrician with the new baby. We ended up having an unassisted postpartum, you guys, which I studied up on in my new book as well, and which felt really, really good. And that's it. That's it. Thank you for hearing my story. It was the most satisfying birth, and I'm so grateful for everything that happened, every single thing, even the supposedly bad bits, to make it exactly what it was. It could not have happened any other way. Now I'd love to hear from you. Over in the show notes at godiaperfree.com/50 is the blog post that I was reading from today. Please leave your comments and thoughts below, including any birth story sharing of your own. This is a safe space. Please be positive and bring people up, or you will be booted. I look forward to hearing your thoughts over there, you guys. And if you want to read my forthcoming book, which by the time this episode is out, it should be out, Brave New Birth, please sign up for the waitlist over at bravenewbirth.com or purchase it over at bravenewbirth.com. It will also be available on Amazon. The information in this book can also be applied to any birth, full of biological wisdom and mammalian common sense. I definitely recommend you get it if you're pregnant. It's a great prep. And it's funny because I wasn't intending to use my own birth to prepare for this 5th birth, but because my midwife quit, I had no other choice, and it was the best resource. This is the first testimonial for the book. I use this book to inform my own birth. So if that helps you, I hope it helps you if you're looking for something like that. Anyway, thanks so much for tuning in, you guys, today. This has been the Go Diaper Free podcast with Andrea Olson at godiaperfree.com, and I will see you next time. We'll start talking about EC again. This is my last birth and final birth, and for sure this time. And I'm glad to have shared this with you today. Thanks for hearing me, and I'll talk to you soon. That's it. Please leave a comment below this video. I heard my kids just come in. And let me know what you think and if you have anything to share. And YouTube obviously is not as safe a space as the blog, so if you want to go over to the blog and comment there, that might be a better idea. Please subscribe by hitting the subscribe button or hit the bell, I think, to right over here somewhere to have me let you know when I have a new video up. Next week, we're going to have another podcast about EC stuff. I hope you'll join me. Take care.